What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Tech in Shanghai podcast. In this show, we are joined by Sebastien Gaudin, CEO and co-founder of the CareVoice. The CareVoice is an up-and-coming company based here in Shanghai that provides a mobile app where patients can rate as well as read and write reviews for medical care providers in China, effectively creating a sort of Yelp for healthcare. Sebastian shared with me a number of the things he and his team have learned along their journey, including a unique method he uses to track his team's performance, which I found very interesting. He does this by identifying correlations between team activity, behavior, or attitude, and corresponding peaks and valleys in overall performance or progress. Next, we speak about his personal journey to entrepreneurship and what circumstances led him to finally make that leap into founding a startup. This is something, of course, an increasing number of people are confronting today, and I think Sebastian provides some really good advice on the subject. Finally, having freshly closed a fundraising round, Sebastian shares with us his fundraising experience and some tips on how to do it successfully, including how much to raise, how to choose investment partners, how long it should take, and much more. There's something in this episode for everyone, so check it out and enjoy.
Welcome to the Tech in Shanghai podcast, the Pearl of the Orient. Shanghai is the city of the future. All systems go, full steam ahead. It never stops. Technology, innovation, ambition. It's everywhere. Join us as we explore this new world and talk to the people making it happen. The Tech in Shanghai podcast. The future is now.
All right, Sebastian, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, John. Thanks for inviting.
So for those people that aren't familiar with the CareVoice, why don't you get us started with an introduction to the company and to yourself and how you guys ended up in Shanghai, China in 2015?
Okay, so CareVoice actually, let's take an example outside the healthcare industry. Most of the audience may be familiar with Yelp in the US or Dajong Danping here in China. So if you imagine these kind of services in healthcare, it's what we are building. A social platform where consumers can share and rate about their experience of medical services and treatment so that we can help them to find and get access to good quality healthcare services and treatment.
Right. And how did you come to be involved in something like this?
So my background is healthcare. I used to work in a major pharmaceutical company, Sanofi, for at least over 10 years in different markets like US, Mexico, France, and China. Actually, I came here as part of the management team of Sanofi. It was 4 or 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And during my third year of expat assignment, I identified a few issues, and one of them around lack of trust from the consumer for the healthcare system here, and at the same time a larger offering available to them. So I decided to set up this venture.
Right. The one thing, we'll keep going on the story in a second, but one thing that just popped into my head is I wonder how life is different now for you, going from having been on an expat assignment, throughout different places throughout the world, but most recently in China, to startup life. I mean, can you comment a little bit on what your day-to-day, how your day-to-day is different than it used to be?
Actually, it's quite different. It's quite different, but more, let's say, around the way I approach the business. I think in large organization, you have much more planning, much more resources, much more steps to get endorsement. Whereas in a startup, you think and you test and you implement, you measure, you adapt.
Right.
It's small scale, very, very small scale.
Quickly, right?
Indeed, in the past, we were talking always about at least 500K, 1 million, 2 million USD budget, whatever activities, programs. And now you're more like at 20K RMB, 50K RMB. So, but the excitement is nothing related to the size of what you're doing. It's like measuring that you can create value and grow something. And I love it.
We talked a little bit before we started recording just about kind of the phenomenon of the growth of the startup industry in general, over the last several years, accelerator programs and all that kind of stuff. But you what I'm wondering is what made you decide to take that leap? As you said, you've been working with Sanofi, a corporate job, for a number of years. What was it in you? What can you put some words on that feeling that made you actually take the leap, and all those things involved in making a leap like that, like going away from the comfortable salary and job and benefits and all that kind of stuff, and taking the leap into startup entrepreneurship. Can you describe that a little bit for us?
Yeah, sure. Interestingly, now I am in the startup ecosystem. I really feel what's going on and how much it is interesting, it's fast, and there are very good opportunities. And actually, when I was still in a corporate role, I had this early sense of this, but it was not at all the driver. And so actually today it's even better surprise, right? So at that time, I think there were three key ingredients for this jump, because as you said, you are like in a comfortable position and there is a kind of cliff. You don't know where you go, right?
Yeah.
You know that you are jumping, but how is going to be the landing?
Not an easy decision.
Yeah. So I think the first thing was a trigger, and the trigger was around really the concept of CareVoice, because I think it's really meaningful what we are building, and there is a financial sustainability of this venture if we make it well and we succeed. So this was really important. It helped me obviously to take the decision, but I think behind that there were a personal background around entrepreneurship. I was still a student, like 12 or 14 years ago. I launched a website at the time to facilitate recruitment of healthcare professionals in France, in my home market.
12 years ago?
A bit more, like 14 years ago, I think at the beginning of internet.
Way ahead of
But I was
time.
still a student, and at that time in pharmacy, and I was not yet in business, and so I have no clue about that we were potentially building a company, and I was doing just this as a way to address a need on the market or where we were. And then when I was in Sanofi over years, I feeded, I think, my entrepreneurship interest by launching product, by setting new partnership with new companies, discovering markets or exploring opportunities. So until I think I found an opportunity in which I wanted to make this. And third, I would say it's more personal life aspect of it is we were in China. We've been at that time for 3 years with my wife. We just got a kids or baby coming in. My wife was turning to a corporate role after her first entrepreneurship experience here. So it was really the right time also because we like to live here,
right.
And we see ourselves staying for some time.
Right, because it's an interesting dynamic, and I think it sounds like for you that kind of underlying entrepreneurial desire was always there. But you often hear advice from experienced entrepreneurs or from people with a lot of experience that it's good to grow your network prior to starting a startup, or secure yourself financially prior to starting a startup to a certain degree, or getting experience from larger corporations prior to starting a startup, so that you have all that experience, so the foundation is strong, and then you can make that leap. What I want to know from you is, was that a conscious strategy from you? Like you were aware that at some point in the future you wanted to be involved in an entrepreneurial venture, but you knew the value of the network, the experience, a financial base, or was it purely you were kind of just going along and then the CareVoice emerged as an idea for you to jump on?
I think going for setting up my own venture was something I had in mind since I was quite young or studying, and actually when I ended up my pharmacy degree, I even was returning 2 different business school programs, and one of it was a pure entrepreneurship program. But at that point of time, I decided to go more from general business school, because I was thinking, okay, I'm not 100% sure I want now to make this entrepreneurial experience. Healthcare at that time, 10, 15 years ago, was still very conservative, and most of the opportunities and resources were in large organizations.
Right.
So I was thinking, okay, it's more strategically wise to start by going in a large organization, learn from it. So it's addressing one point. I was not thinking at that time of building network or whatever, but obviously it's a strong asset once you decide to jump. So. I think part of it was thinking through, but I was not ready at that time anyway to go directly for starting a venture. And
where did the idea for the CareVoice come from?
I think by being foreigner in a market, you are to some extent more curious than in your own market, or also you look at it with different eyes than the local people. You see some gap versus other solutions that you may see outside. And I think what struck me was really this trust issue of people for the healthcare system. Since 2009, the government have invested massively to try to catch up with expectation of any growing population with better access to whatever services. And so the offering is very large. There are many hospitals, many doctors, many treatment available. But you still see a very common problem here that people don't really trust. Everybody goes on the same few places. When doctors are recommending something, they're going to see another doctor. They don't necessarily trust the treatment which is prescribed to them. So this was, I think, a big issue. In the same time, outside the healthcare, we see a lot of people sharing about whatever they do, much more than in Western countries, right? The social aspect is much stronger. So the idea was to say, okay, can we use this peers' opinion as a way to help people to be more confident about some options for them?
It's funny that, basically what you're talking about is using the network of people that are online to convey confidence in whatever service or service provider you're talking about, right? And it's just peculiar to me that when this sort of technology becomes available, the first things that pop up are like you mentioned, Yelp, or relatively trivial uses of this sort of technology and this sort of service. Whereas something like what the CareVoice is doing, which is leveraging the network toward greater confidence in a medical setting, which I would think, and I think most people would agree, is very important, maybe paramount, maybe it's the most important usage of such a network. It comes later. I find that a peculiar thing, but maybe it's telling about what we humans actually care about, more so than what we intellectually think we should be caring about.
Yeah, and again, according to the markets, but even in some more mature markets where the healthcare system is maybe more in place with better quality, you start to observe a reverse phenomena where people start to feel, hey, but we tended to believe that medical providers, doctors were on the top and we can trust everything. But actually now more and more the consumer have access to information. They are sometimes even better, more knowledgeable than their doctor, or they have obviously different, a broader perspective. So in that context, people and consumerization of healthcare is something that is growing. And so I think there is a trend now around the healthcare that was not maybe a couple of years before, like for other more daily consumption goods or services.
Yeah. And is this something that, doctors, healthcare providers, hospitals are generally happy to see emerge? Or is it something that may shed unwanted light on their services or their people?
I think overall, there is, and let's talk about China. Let's be specific to the market where we are putting our efforts. General position is okay. They see this as a trend anyway, that consumers go online, seek information.
Right.
And then what is interesting is, according to the kind of medical provider, you're not going to have the same response. So obviously, if you go for private institutions, they are the first one to say, yeah, it's very interesting. They are trying to build confidence among population to go for better service, different from the public setting. Yeah. But obviously, it's a higher price, and China is very sensitive to price. It's a value for money, and so on. So they are interested to build the confidence of people by showing how patients can be satisfied and well managed in their facilities. And then if you go to on the opposite, let's say a big class 3 hospital, which is the highest certification in Shanghai, highly specialized, let's say Huashan and for dermatology, which is their top specialty. They have so many patients there. Doing this they don't really mind about the reputation because they are nationally recognized as top hospital. Right. They're struggling maybe to try to better manage this flow of patients, but not much caring frontline for that. So you can see, the opposite. And in the middle, you're going to have some institutions who really have still a lack of demand. So they do this as a way to promote themselves, showing their good care and differentiating from others. You have also some, interestingly, some medical professionals that see the challenge of the relationship with patients, and we see it in the newspaper. Sometimes some acute crisis, the patients are going after the doctor. So if they start to show themselves as much more listening attitude to the patients. Mm-hmm. Helping this relationship is also something that they are interested in, and see how they can continuously improve the quality from patient feedback.
And when you say it's of interest to people that are trying to generate more demand for their services, I presume that's private hospitals, right? Because in China, my experience has been that public hospitals are just overwhelmed with patients.
So
right?
it's obviously true and very true for private, but even in public hospitals now, any of these big name of hospitals, of public one, Huashan, Regin, they are building sisters hospital. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have 3-4 related hospital also across the city, which they still have to bring up patients. If you go in one of those big hospitals, according to the department, they are maybe not the most famous hospital for this specialty. Mm-hmm. So in this kind of case, they also still have interest to bring in more patients. If you go in some hospitals of those big names on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you see that the number of patients queuing for some services, not all services obviously, but maybe the less famous in bracket services for this hospital, you still have need for demand.
Right. And is this something like would the I presume most of the users of the CareVoice are locals at the moment, or what's your breakdown between?
95% local. Yeah, the platform was only Chinese until like a few months ago,
right?
And we developed the English setting only because some hospitals, some insurance company with who we work have both population. They treat foreigners and Chinese.
Right. And so, do you speak Chinese?
I can speak. I can speak. Let's say Chinese for daily life, and even in some professional situation.
Right.
But I'm not fluent.
So, what kind of a challenge was it for you to develop an app, which I presume of this complexity is difficult enough, but to do so in a foreign language?
You have multiple challenges. You have a challenge which is around competitive landscape and internet or mobile user behavior, which are more specific to China. So you have to enter into these two dimensions.
Yeah.
And then when really you have your product, which is starting to be conceived and developed, then it's more like let's say quality control. And same with the user generated content we have is also this quality control dimension, which are challenge when you are not able to read fluently.
Right. And are there, along that same kind of line, are there any, my observation of the Chinese technology market and entrepreneurs in China is that, and I think they've gotten maybe a bad rap in the past because they've typically maybe copied concepts and rolled them out here. But I think what's beginning to emerge is that those copies are now becoming even better than the predecessors or the things that they've copied maybe in the West or anywhere else in the world. But my observation is that development happens so fast here. When a Chinese startup or a large Chinese tech property gets involved in something, I mean, it just seems to develop so fast and they onboard users so fast. I mean, it's amazing. Is there any competition for the CareVoice in China from a local startup?
So I think we see there are different ways to address this need of the consumers, right? Helping them to navigate among the healthcare services and treatment and find out which one can be good. What happened in China is the first players who started to be more specialized in healthcare, so going out of pure information provider, came in the service of doctor remote consultation, because of the challenge to consult a doctor in a top institution with this waiting time and huge number of patients there and very short consultation. So there are a few platforms where you can either trigger a phone consultation with the doctor or start to have question and answer principle.
So access basically to
access, and so in that, obviously in that setting, you're going to have a list of hospital, list of doctors, sometimes comments about the doctors from those interactions. But they're really here to address this access and consultation remotely with a sample of hospital and doctors who are offering this service. Right. So this is one area where we see, and there have been lots of companies, and I would say most of the healthcare startups are working in this to try to do differently first versus the first ones who came here like maybe a few years ago. So really focusing on the evaluation from a patient's perspective, we are the first one. We have now a number two. Actually, there is another company that launched maybe 1 year after us, like a few months ago. I think it's clearly an area of interest. And you were mentioning the large tech companies. For instance, Alibaba is setting up a whole platform to support hospitals and obviously at the end consumers.
Of course,
patient evaluation is a component of what they want to bring in the platform. So then, is whether if you do a holistic platform, is it the way to go, or if you are more like also focused on one area, it's you create more engagement of the people on this. So
and when you see, and this could apply to any startup, but obviously specific to the CareVoice, when you see either local startups enter the market and become competitors, or you hear of huge properties like Alibaba coming in and having intentions to disrupt the space and bring together all these great services, does that change anything about what you guys do, your strategy, how you think and feel about the business?
I think it just reinforced the decision or the strategic directions we took, which were to go in one segment of the market, which is more the higher tier of the market, where we may be able to bring in more business partners also, which are aiming to address those growing higher tier, higher social categories population.
Right.
And to continue to create more value to our user base differently from those more mass market volume approach. Yeah. And I think this is where we have better strengths, and at one point we may create also a value for maybe partnering with any of these players.
Right. And in this market, how do you attract users? How do you attract those local users as a startup in this industry?
So because we had the need to get the content at first from users, it was really important to find marketing strategies where we can get contributors quickly on board on the platform. So we tried to figure out different ways. Obviously, if you start to go on social media, because it takes time to raise awareness, credibility of your platform, to get enough followers, this doesn't translate quickly into users and content from them. Yeah. So what worked pretty well was to go offline, and especially to go where patients or where consumers are and where they're consuming medical services or treatment. So having a team on the ground, nearby hospitals, starting to engage them, explain them what we are building, the platform, joining the platform and sharing content has been quite successful.
So you must have done or be doing a lot of that type of stuff, right? Because I imagine to really get the numbers you need, you'd have to shake a lot of hands and speak to a lot of people and that sort of thing.
Yeah, but I think as soon as you go in an area where people are consuming healthcare, they know they experience the care, so it's quite easy. They are very let's say captive. You come with something which resonates to them, so we can engage them quite easily. Then one challenge is that we were focusing on one population, so then you don't want anyone to join the platform. So you should still train your own team to go and target the right consumers and get them on board. So then you are more filtering than what really you can get on the ground.
Right. And as we know, in China, there's a bias toward, in many industries and for many types of products and services, there's a bias toward foreign products and services. I think because there's a large safety and trust issue with the Chinese consumer, right? So whether it's baby formula or whether it's soap or whether it's whatever, there's a strong bias toward foreign products in many cases. Being a foreign founded startup. Is there any bias, positive or negative, towards the CareVoice, do you think, from your users?
Yeah. Actually, we don't play so much for now this foreign funded team. I think all what we do is really Chinese and localized. But because of the consumer target, we are putting more efforts on, and so obviously they have an interest for qualitative services and treatment and foreign origin. So, for instance, we work with a couple of medical institutions who are gonna have maybe more recognition on that side, or the first online pharmacy with who we partnered for ordering whatever prescription or OTC treatments is a foreign pharmacy specialized company, and especially they have imported products as a core of their offer.
And speaking of monetization, at the moment the service you provide is free, right?
So the platform is for free to the user.
To review and to read the profiles.
To access the content, search whatever hospital, doctors on treatment. If they start to get an appointment with a private institution or order a treatment online, then we have a commission based.
Right.
But for user, and it will stay mostly free for user over time. The model is more on the B side, helping medical providers, service providers to manage actively their reputation and drive more patients to them.
Okay. So the platform is free, but patients can actually book appointments through the app? Is that what you're saying?
So we start with some private institutions. It's heavily regulated appointment, especially on the public setting. It's very difficult to implement because you need to connect with the IT system of the hospital.
Right.
We see this market as mostly now approached or tackled by government-backed companies, and it's going to be quite fragmented. So actually, you can then partner with any of these service providers and refer the patients to those providers.
Right. So what's the largest source of revenue for the CareVoice right now?
The first one is going to be right now it's very small actually, and because we need to build a large user base.
So that's still the phase you guys are in, kind of
exactly.
free revenue.
We have some revenues. We are post revenue. We have already some of our consumers who order some treatment online, for instance, that generated the commission for us.
Yeah.
And so this is one, and then obviously sponsored content when you have larger base of users. So for now, we give opportunities to some medical institutions or treatments to use the platform as a way to generate or post content, and which is sponsored content. But this we do it for free for now because our user base is not big enough.
Right.
But obviously it's also some value for our user.
Yeah.
And later on, we have obviously with larger base of users, this will be another source of revenues.
Right, right. Now, the CareVoice, I mean, as far as I know, especially in this market, it's quite a unique service. But around the world, there's a lot of really interesting things happening in the medical industry. So whether it's reviews on doctors and hospitals, or whether it's the sharing of treatment protocols among patients so that everyone can see what kind of treatments are more effective for different illnesses and diseases, or whether it's doctors having an app to share between themselves what kind of patients they're seeing and treatments they're prescribing. I mean, there's so much going on. And then, of course, you got the high level like X Prize stuff where they want to figure out a way to diagnose X, Y, and Z in 10 minutes on your iPhone or something. There seems to be a lot going on in this space. And for me, it's incredibly exciting. I mean, I'm very involved in the wellness industry, and I find, I think it's on an altruistic level, it's great to have these things emerge, because I think we all recognize to some degree that the medical system around the world is antiquated at best and extremely problematic at worst. So it's great to see that all these different nodes around the world are contributing to making that better. And this is a long way around asking the question, does that make it, all this hype around what's the disruption, shall we say, of the medical industry through technology, how does that impact how you guys are able to attract investors and raise funds for your business? You know, is there a lot of hype and a lot of interest in what you're doing, especially in such a big market, or is it still a very difficult process?
No, I think healthcare definitely is a very hot market. Over the last, in US, it's huge, right? The number of startups who are who've now have passed the step of startups and being very significant players.
Yeah.
And in China, I would say when I started to look at it like 2.5 years ago, it was, I think, still quite quiet. But the last 18 months, it has been really pushed very, very, very strongly, and we started to hear the large transactions, large players coming in, many people with healthcare background moving out from pharma or device industry and start to see how they can jump into this wave. So I think this is very good, very, very good environment, and investors obviously has, and depending on the investors, but healthcare is one segment in which they are looking very actively.
Right.
But so far, I think all say that the projects are quite early stage. So it's good also to some extent, because you mean that we need to show the value and bring the confidence of the investors, because it's a conservative industry. So the disruption may not take like this. I think it's a very good environment, and at the same time you have to show well the healthcare system, the way it works, the way to engage with different partners, and it's one of the strengths of our startup.
Sure. And correct me if I'm wrong, but in July you guys raised a pre-A round?
Yeah, exactly.
And was that round raised through local investors or foreign offices of foreign firms, or local offices of foreign firms? Or
so this round has been done with business angel. So it's our first round with professional investors. Before that was more like close connections,
family and friends. And stuff
exactly.
Like that.
We had an offer from a local investor, and we didn't manage to get a line on the term of the offer. So we preferred to go for an alternative options where it's mostly successful entrepreneurs, local, based here and in Europe, that decided to participate in the round.
Right. And how much did you have to fundraise? Like, did you have to pitch a large number of investors, or did you have the right network, so it was only a couple hops here and there to speak to the right people? What was it like?
It took us like 6 months roughly. And in terms of volume, it's difficult to say, but I would say we learned a lot through the process, because it was the first time really to go and see, and we didn't know if we would go for, and if we were at the right time for going for more venture capitalists or more angel investors. So quite early in the process, we had a first offer, but then it was also difficult to get it done and to get the final binding commitment on it. So it took us a bit of time, but I think any fundraising is at least 6 months. At least now is a key learning. Right. And it's good at early stage to leverage a lot the people who work in your industry, who are knowledgeable about this industry, because it's easier for them to quickly figure out where you come from, what you are building. This was one important learning, and also leverage network of networks. So.
Sure. And why raise? When you're fundraising, when you're thinking about starting fundraising, as a startup, what's the deciding factor for raising a pre-A round, another seed round or an angel round, versus going right to a Series A round? Is it a matter? How do you make that decision? Is it where the company is at?
It's driven by your funding need, right? So whether you need and you are ready for getting $1 to $1 million USD, or if you don't need it yet, right away. Right. So for instance, one of the local investors that we turned down was offering more and was even ready to offer much more. But if you take it too early, first you dilute yourself. And second, you need to take the money when you need it, right? So But in the same times, you need to have sufficient cash so that you don't go and raise again too quickly.
So is that a, because I know a lot of entrepreneurs are listening, and this question is a big question for a lot of people. When the time comes, how much to raise, how much equity to give away, all these different considerations. You can consult all the books and speak to all the people you can, but it's still, I would imagine, a difficult decision to make. So when you have a local investor like that offer you a large sum, is it difficult to turn down, or was it very clear that, because I would think that the extra amount of capital that they're offering you makes you think, I could do so much, we could accelerate what we're doing, we could do so much more with this. So is it challenging to turn it down, or were you certain that this was not the right amount for you at this time?
You can accept it provided that you find common grounds on the terms behind it, right? And you can always phase your cash. If someone is ready to give you $2-3 million right now, you can say, okay, but actually I will activate it, I don't know, 6 months down the road when we reach this milestone. So what is important is to know maybe what is your standalone plan or base plan, what you have to deliver in the next 12 to 18 months, which is usually the period on which you need to get funding appropriately. And then if you have the opportunity to get more, is what you can do to accelerate, which could be great, right? If you can go faster, but you need to make sure that you have the solid foundation for that.
Yeah, and is it challenging in terms of how much time it takes away from the operations of the business when you are raising money? Is that an issue for you? Because in the past, I've heard from certain entrepreneurs that when you're fundraising, you can't do much else.
Very challenging.
Very challenging.
Yeah, so you are very happy as soon as you can get out of it and be back on the full-time on the business.
Yeah, and when you're looking for partners and investors, again, you mentioned the local investor, the offer you got from a local investor. What do you look for? I mean, obviously you're looking for capital, but are you looking for strategic networks? Are you looking for alignment in philosophy and altruism? Or what are the main variables that you look for in an investor, and what may help you decide yes or no, all things being equal in terms of the money they're offering?
I think first you should have a full alignment on the vision of the company and what you want to build. It's critical. Two is the values. So this can be reflected in the way you engage with the investor, the way you discuss, where you get feedback.
Right. What kind of vibe you get from them.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And to be and align with the value of the team here. Very straightforward, very transparent, constructive, such kind of things. And beside that, then third is how they can help you for the business beside cash. And in our sector, obviously getting some connection with the healthcare offers like public system, government-backed healthcare institution are important components. Could be also with media, because for any startup, getting connection with media is good to help you grow. Yeah. And then pure internet successful experience also.
All things being equal, is there a preference to have foreign investors versus local investors?
No specific. No, I think we are obviously open to work with Chinese or foreigners.
Right.
As soon as they know the market here, and then we are on the same page for strategy, value, and how they can help us.
Right. So you raised in July. So this gives you about a 12 to 18 month runway to put your head down and work, right?
Yes, but actually you need to work before that, because you need to get the funding.
You can never stop. But.
But I mean to get funding, to get your funding effective, you need to start earlier. But we think that we don't need to wait so long. We were just at a phase where we had the need to accelerate our growth. We had, I think, the certain level of foundation now, and we can use it to accelerate, and especially here on the local market in Shanghai.
Yeah.
And I guess within the next 6 to 9 months, we'll have offers for A round.
Right. And what's it like? I presume, how many of your staff are local Chinese?
We are 2 foreigners, and all the team is local Chinese.
So can you tell us a bit about that experience? Just, obviously you've worked with, I presume at Sanofi you had, Chinese staff as well, but, for those listening that are going down the same road, what kind of things should you be mindful of when working with local staff, if any?
I think since I arrived in China, I've been quite lucky. I hear a lot around me from foreigners that sometimes they are struggling with working with local teams.
Yeah.
I had the chance in both experience to set up my own team, more or less. In Sanofi, I think I had 1 or 2 people when I started, and we ended up at 15 guys in the team, and here more or less the same. So yeah, so it means that you are as soon as you are building something from scratch, and you involve the team to and into buying or even to feed this venture or this new initiative. Everybody is engaged, and then the big value in a startup is it's a very small environment, so you quickly get trust between the team members, and everybody is helping each other and wants to move. So I think it's make it much I think different from what you may hear sometimes where you have foreigners taking teams and at the beginning they have some challenge.
Because I think a lot of anguish or a lot of frustration comes from a mismatch between what your expectations might be and what the reality is, right? And I think, at least I've heard a lot of stories, as I'm sure you have as well, where the expectations didn't match the reality. So though you've been relatively lucky in this regard, are there any, things that you would suggest to entrepreneurs that might be coming to China to get involved in a startup in terms of managing their expectations about working with Chinese coworkers or staff or employees?
I think definitely being transparent, quickly sharing what's happening. You need to put everybody on board, right? Everybody on the same level of information and create this trust, so that then you can say whatever things to people. You can tell them what is good and maybe what are gap versus your expectation. And obviously the level of sophistication sometimes is not necessarily at what you are used to in other market or mature with more mature teams. But people are very engaged, energetic. They want to do. So as soon as you create this good environment, then you can have very easily feedback with people and help everybody to deliver more and with better results. So right. I think this is the most important.
Right. And another aspect other than the employees and staff is, are there anything specific to China? You decided to start up in China because you were here with the corporation already and you saw the opportunity and all that kind of stuff. But are there any significant roadblocks, mental or physical, so again, down to these expectations, what to expect, that you could share with people that might prepare them better for operating a business in China? Because I'm sure it's very different from operating a business in other markets that they might be in right now.
I think if the people, one important, potential roadblocker is around the how to formulate it. It's the fact that you may believe at the beginning that the rules are unclear. You don't know exactly how to operate or what you should do, what you cannot do, just from a legal, administrative standpoint, and how it can impact your business ability. But then, as soon as you say, okay, maybe it's a bit complicated, whatever, but let's try and do it. Just put this challenge aside and just go directly to our consumer, create a product, see how it responds. To some extent, take advantage of this gray zone to start to operate. Bring in people. You don't have yet a contract, but you still bring in the people. You don't have yet a license, but you still operate. This is part of because otherwise you may start to struggle and spend too much effort in trying to solve problems which are anyway not really solvable. Right. And you can solve or put it aside and solve it later.
So you're kind of saying, don't be too concerned about doing everything by the book initially or having to know exactly how things are supposed to be done, because China still remains to be a bit of a gray market or gray in certain areas.
At the very beginning, when you are under the radar, right? You are a startup, you are under the radar, so you can, and you should take the opportunity to go the faster to your to the market, to your client, and not with a fully finished product, but you start to engage with them and build with them.
Another one of the things I'm very interested in, and I speak with a lot of guests and other entrepreneurs about, is the personal side of being involved in a startup. Because, and I mention this a lot, probably too much, but and we spoke about it at the beginning of the show, the kind of phenomenon of the startup ecosystem, over the last 5 or even 10 years, how it's such a draw for young entrepreneurs and even older entrepreneurs of all kinds, that the ability to come and start up a company, and now the infrastructure, technological infrastructure is becoming so much more available, so the cost to entry are lower than they used to be, and it's a very attractive. And in the startup news, you hear about all the great things that are happening and people making money and IPOing and selling out. But that doesn't tell the story of the thousands, perhaps millions of entrepreneurs that are involved in these things and that on a daily basis are dealing with stress, uncertainty, anxiety, and all the other things that come with operating a business. So, and I think and doing so in a foreign country represents a completely different dynamic as well. I mean, doing it in your home country where the culture you understand, everything is normal, all the things you grew up with are still there, versus coming to not only a foreign country, but let's be honest, coming to China, which is a very different foreign country from even other foreign countries. It's not like if you're from France and you go to the US, I mean, you more or less can adapt and understand the culture. But here, there are so many things that can throw you off. And I share your opinion. I really like it here, but it doesn't change the fact that China is a bit quirky. So on a personal level, what do you do, if anything, personally, to stay on your game, like to stay focused, to stay balanced, to not, stress out too much? Do you do anything in particular? Yeah. Or approach it with any kind of mindset?
Yeah, I'm going to address your question right away. I think just one comment on the background you shared. Yes, you can start your venture in your own home country, but then you're going to have also your limitation because you have already some preconceived ideas because you know so well the market. Yeah. Or you believe you know so well the market that you may take some decision and think too easily with respect to what you do. So I think also to some extent being in a market where you're more on a white page, not fully, you should never start with fully white page, but at least when you know and you acknowledge deeply that you have to go and get the right insights and find the opportunities. I think it's always double sword, right? You have lots of advantage of it.
And you've got to, when you come to a foreign market, like you said earlier, you see it differently than the people that are here. And again, in fewer places is that more true than China, I would assume. Like we can come here and we can clearly see certain things that are going on that perhaps, a local person... It's always been part of
we won't see necessarily in our own market.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
And then you can be also perceived as a foreigner here as a strength, right? From an investor standpoint, they usually see it more as a weakness until you make your sufficient evidence of your ability to go to market or to drive a local team. Yeah. But you have still some advantage of approaching stakeholders because you are foreigners. They're going to hear you differently. They're going to think, maybe they have kind of innovation behind something new. So there are some advantages. But obviously it doesn't prevent the fact that you go through hard time for any entrepreneur experience and being in China or elsewhere. So on my side, I like to, from time to time, to assess on the scale 0 to 100% my level of confidence on the business, and also discuss it with some of the team members, openly where we stand. It's always good, and then to think back about the last phase, right? The last 3 months, the last 6 months, the last 9 months, and what happened to make it change.
You mean so you look back and say we were really confident then, and this is where the business was at, this was what happened during that time, and we were really low confidence.
And it's not the weeds, it could be high. High as a person, and sometimes someone else in the team member may have a different perception of when he had these.
And how that might have impacted other team members or the company.
Exactly. So I think it's good it's something that I like to do, and I started to do it only since I'm an entrepreneur. And then obviously you compensate or any big risk, any big challenge you foresee or any difficulties by looking at at what's good out there, right? Why we are doing it, where are the opportunities, what are the good results so you concentrate on what's good and the opportunities for the business. And another aspect of it is to think back about why you do this, and some component is also what you build with your shareholders, with the first investors who trusted you, and with your team, with your partners. So the people who have been the first one on board and step by step continues joining you are a very strong, I think, source of confidence and energy for continuing to build something. Yeah. So thinking back also of this and nurture it, right? So yeah.
Because I like to have these discussions, and I had a discussion with a friend of mine recently who's also in the healthcare space, and because it's something I think about a lot, and I wonder, from an entrepreneur's perspective, where every day there's so much uncertainty, every day there's, I'm sure, plenty of reasons to say, oh, this isn't working, or, my inner motivation is waning, or there's doubt, or, and you've got to keep things pushing forward and keep the team alive. And he had an answer that is not super motivational, it's not an inspiring answer, but I found it to be truthful, I could see the truth in it. And he basically said, and he'd been working on something for 8 years, and it was coming together, and it's still coming to fruition, but he had anticipated it to be like 1 or 2 years, and it's been 8 years. And he said, at a certain point I realized, I did want to give up. I wanted to close the doors. This was just too much, not what I expected, too much time, too much work, too much stress. So I let go of my own inner motivation for this thing a long time ago. But I had the obligation, as you just mentioned, to my stakeholders, to my shareholders, to the people that had invested in me. And I didn't want to let them down, for personal reasons and also for financial and legal reasons. So, and that the reason why I say that is because by his own admission, that allowed him to stop stressing about should I, shouldn't I, that inner battle, that inner conflict that can sometimes emerge, because it was irrelevant now. Because he had decided that, his motivation, the reason why he was going to push this to the end was for those external reasons. And I found that interesting, because it's not like that inspiring, remember why you got into this because you're super passionate, you want to change the world. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, at some point it's my job. I have some duties. I have some obligation.
Exactly.
I should do it. Yeah. I think, I guess depending of how many years you have been fighting for, and how much each time you found strong motivation in what you're doing. But I'm not at this stage, definitely. I think one important aspect of it, because you were saying this battle about should I stop or whatever, I think it's something that as a startup you may have you may know that maybe in 3 months, 6 months there is a big step, right? And if you don't get this down, or if you don't go through it, then it's going to be much more complicated. So it's always important to set what is the next one, when does it come, and have clear work on this until you reach them, and hopefully you have done what is necessary to pass and go through it.
Right.
So that you, during that period of time, you don't wonder yourself, right? You just you not wonder yourself about what if I fail or whatever. You just we have to do things. Yeah. But then you still face some motivational challenge or some pressure, and here you should find ways to create your own, And on my side, I like using the team, getting their feedback, as I was saying, to self-evaluation. Just by saying things, then people are more getting back to, okay, that's fine. It can be more difficult now, but great, we're gonna do this and we're gonna make it with what we have in our pipe. So
yeah, that's an interesting strategy. But in terms of your experience, again on the personal side of things, is there any advice you can give to would-be entrepreneurs, would-be startup founders? And this can be, in terms of exercise or, a certain financial situation before you do it. But is there any, from the experience you've had up to this point, 2 or 3 pieces of advice which you would give to the, a would-be entrepreneur to say, this is not a must-do, but maybe consider this might help you on your way?
No, I can just say what helped me, and I think one is secure your family plan, or make sure that there is a common alignment also on the family side or personal side. So if you are on your own, just secure, what do you need if everything crash, right? Yeah. To, I don't know, get your flight ticket to go back wherever you have to go back, or find a new job. If you just think, what is the worst thing if I crash? Okay, I get a new job in a large corporation, I get whatever X, K, and at least what, and then it's easy, right?
Takes a lot of the stress off failing, right?
But I think making sure that you're aligned also with the family side, because when you are running your venture, it's stressful, it's very engaging, and so obviously it makes some challenge in the ability to manage also your personal life. So I like one entrepreneur who is chairing entrepreneurship now school in Spain called IE. He's a famous banker and then moved from different jobs. I don't remember his name, but he did a thesis after all that career path around how the entrepreneurs are, what are their mindset? Is there any prerequisite or predictive factor of that you're gonna be an entrepreneur? And he was saying what the typical life of an entrepreneur, and drawing this from a professional side, it's only like circle and troublesome lines and blah, blah, blah. And what is a personal life is a single line, very, very flat. So meaning at the end that you may have to keep it the easiest as possible on your personal side, like daily routine, go early for wake up, since I'm an entrepreneur, I wake up every day at 6. I have my routine in the morning. I know how I just relax later on the day when bringing back my daughter or whatever. Finding ways to make it simple, doing outside. Seeing a few friends, not so many because anyway you have time.
No time.
Finding your own balance, and because you have a complicated professional daytime,
right, and
sometimes nighttime.
Yeah.
But try to manage also on the.
And that's the second last question I wanted to ask you was: is that difficult thing to engineer? Because I imagine as a startup entrepreneur, you're always thinking you could be doing more. There's more to be done, of course, always, and I think a lot of people think, well, I could always be doing more. And you, of course, you have a wife and you have a family, right? So is it challenging to be kind of like military and carving out that time so that your personal life is more or less unaffected by the crazy startup, world that you've gotten yourself into?
No, it is obviously affected because your mind, even if you're with family,
if you're at home, you're thinking about it, right?
Thinking about business, but. No, but you have to make some decision and obviously you cannot do it. So you should find the time also for this balance.
Right.
I think then it's kind of routine, and for instance, the weekend you're gonna try to get at least whatever half days with family,
right,
and you're gonna avoid and skip some maybe outing or invitation that come up because you want to make sure that you do a few things also either for work, because otherwise you won't feel good. Right?
Yeah. I imagine it takes some tinkering with to find that balance between, not burning out and maintaining that personal and family life, but also giving the business everything you can. I imagine that's a really tricky balance, and probably one that you never perfect, but you're always kind of working on.
You need to work on it, exactly.
Last question. I know speaking of work, I know you've got to get back to it. Where is CareVoice, or the CareVoice, in 5 years? What do you see for it? Can you paint us a picture?
I think we are going to be this reference platform where people will go to when they have a health problem or they have a need of finding services to stay healthy, because we help people to be more confident about those options. And we'll be here as a reference in China, but I think in other, at least Asian market.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right. Well, Sebastian, thank you very much for coming on the show today. Was there any information, URL you can send out for people that want to get in touch with the CareVoice, email, URL, Twitter, any of that stuff?
If you have an interface, I'll share obviously, but the easiest is either through my LinkedIn, Sebastien Gaudin, Gaudin, and then it's easy to see more information about the company or to reach me out.
Cool, and we'll put all that stuff in the show notes as well. And for us guys, as you know, it's techinshanghai.com or twitter.com/techinshanghai, and all the episodes are now available on YouTube as well, so you can search for us there. That's it. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Tech in Shanghai podcast. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe to us on iTunes and follow us on Twitter @Tech in Shanghai for everything tech from Shanghai and China. See you next time.